Hey, I'm Jeremy. Welcome back to Rugby Informer. What a win for the Boks to wrap up their 2024 season, beating Wales pretty convincingly in Cardiff. While Wales are not the sharpest team at the moment and they're having their own internal problems, I think that game was just an absolute demonstration of what the Boks are capable of. Yes, it wasn't perfect, but the Boks showcased a really comprehensive game plan, showing off those new skills that they've been evolving over the last 12 months, the faster passing, the more accurate distribution, the more expansive play, the more aggressive defense, and it culminated in a great performance that showed off a lot of individual ability as well as the team cohesion that's been solidified over the last 12 months into adding a little cherry on the top for Rassie Erasmus and the coaching staff. And first and foremost, a little credit has to be given to the Welsh. The crowd was amazing. You know, whether Wales is going through a tough time or not, that Welsh crowd comes out and fills Millennium Stadium every time. It was absolutely heaving, and they were supporting their team right until the end, even when they picked up that late 80th minute try. Absolute props to Wales. That's a fan base that other Rugby Nation should be envious of. You know, through thick and thin, they backed the boys in red, and it was just really cool to see. And for the players too, you know, they went through quite a tough 80 minutes taking on the Boks. It was physical. The Boks were brutal. They were ripping the Welsh team to shreds, but they kept on fighting. I thought their loose forwards had an incredible game, putting up a good physical battle with the South Africans. Again, even pushing right until the end to get that final try, and even preventing a try. There was a fantastic tackle from the Welsh fullback that stopped Apelele Fassi from scoring, and it just showed that even though they knew they probably weren't going to come away with the win in that game, just that Welsh spirit is there, and they're definitely going to come back and evolve over the next year. Their whole team is incredibly young, and I think you'll see Welsh rugby on the rise again in the foreseeable future. As for the Boks, I really thought that was the best example of Tony Brown's influence really coming to the forefront. Synchronicity and a synergy between the forwards and the backs. The distinction in the Springboks between how the backline plays and how the forwards plays is getting smaller and smaller, and it's for the better. You're seeing the backline players starting to do more and more, a lot of the hard, brutal, more traditionally forward-orientated work, and you're starting to see the forwards playing with the ball a lot more. And Tony Brown's always loved those forwards who can play with the ball and link up with the backs, play out wide. And you saw that early in the game where Eben Etzebeth was floating in the outside channels. Great quick little pass from him, showcasing his passing ability once again to Kurt the Arendse, who, you know, maybe in years gone by, Etzebeth would have just watched Arendse dash away to the try line, but followed up with an incredible sprint and got the ball back inside to score. And you saw it later, passing from Grobele to Albert Low out wide, using that outside little channel where, you know, traditionally the wingers would be standing. So you're seeing this great interplay between the backs and forwards running like backs hitting rucks and tackling like forwards. It was the perfect example of that idealistic game plan where the number on your back doesn't really matter. Everyone just knows their role and knows what they need to do, or can put in an effort or a shift that they need to in any given circumstance. And the Springboks are the perfect team to embrace that kind of attitude and that philosophy, because the Springboks just have big, powerful, physical players, no matter what numbers on their back. And you saw the best cohesion between backs and forwards, I think, in the last 12 months. And again, yes, it wasn't against a very well-organized team, but I think the Springboks obviously did their homework, and they could see that Welsh defense has been struggling this year, and decided to just put a full attacking mindset into the players for this week. Just about every time a Welsh player was isolated with a tackle, the Boks straight went for a turnover, and as soon as they got the turnover, they went on a counter-attack, as was the case with Etzebeth's first try. And even when they got to set pieces, you saw a great set-piece move from the Springboks off a 5-meter line-out. Traditionally, they would just go for that line-out maul and go for that easy try, but you saw them go for a backline move. The ball went wide out to Arendse, and he scored. You know, scoring off a first-phase move like that, off of a set-piece, without a player even being touched, is the thing you kind of aspire to and dream of. You know, it's things like the All Blacks were doing years gone by. The Springboks have obviously had that ability, and they've been doing it here and there, but you can just see the confidence in them that they're happy to go for that rather than go for the more. Whether they were testing their ability or they identified that the Welsh backline wasn't as experienced defensively as they needed to be, it was just great to see. And executed flawlessly. Especially with that move in particular, the Boks are using Damien Dialendi in a lot smarter way in the last couple of weeks, especially on this tour. Obviously, his best ability is being a ball carrier himself and taking contact. He's got a very powerful leg drive and often gets over the gain line with ease. But he's got that ability to also play the ball out the back a lot these days, which is such a weapon for a team like South Africa, because the defensive line has to hold on De Allende. He's too big and too powerful not to shift off of him. Whether he carries the ball into contact, he's probably going to get over the try line or at least very close to it. And if he goes out the back, suddenly there's two players who stuck on him and the rest of the back line has way more space to work with. I love the way they're using De Allende. Even heading into his 30s, he's evolving his game and becoming way more of a dynamic ball player in that center position. And I think you're going to see a lot more tries coming through his hands in the coming months. And obviously, everyone's eyes were on Jordan Hendrickse. There's always such an interest in the South African fly half position. And he really raised his game. And I think he had the best game in the green jersey to date. He was good in the air. He was aggressive with his ball carrying. His passing really impressed me. Very accurate, very fast, and delivering them very wide and very flat to the outside backs in order to give them a bit of a drift to get on the outside of the Welsh backline. The Springboks were obviously targeting those more inexperienced Welsh players, but he did such a good job to just distribute that ball and had the ability to take it to the line also and play very shallow from the defensive line and to stand really deep and get those big passes out. Jordan's shown that he deserves to be there. He linked up so well with his brother. They just seemed so in sync, weren't even talking to each other, but you could just see they know each other's body language, how each other passes, how each other kicks so well. That little telepathic communication between one another was really cool to see. So hopefully we see a lot more of Jordan and Jaden as a combo in 2025. And again, from Damien De Allende, just evolving his game a little bit further. You saw him put through a little chip kick to Arendse that he just wasn't able to pick up and score. But it's great to see him looking up, just seeing what's in front of him and playing that rather than just sticking to the script of bashing it up and playing very predictable rugby. He's added so many arrows to his quiver, kind of becoming that Ma Nonu type of player in his later years, really offering everything: physical ball carrying, great passing, good kicking game. I think Damien De Allende is probably the most well-rounded center in world rugby at the moment. Again, another example of how the forwards are evolving their passing skill under the mentorship of Tony Brown. It ended up being a non-try for Khaleesi, but you saw this quick offloading, passing, little tip-ons from the forwards that kind of just moved the ball and moved the points of contact so fast that the Welsh defense weren't able to keep up with it, and Khaleesi went over. Unfortunately, there was a little knock-on that ended up taking the try away, but I was really impressed with just the speed and the accuracy of these little forward passes, whether it's just a little pop inside or a tip on from the first receiver to the second. It really just keeps the defensive line guessing. It makes it very difficult for them to target a certain player. And with the size of the Springboks and the speed that the forwards play at, to add those tiny little pieces of skill to the way their pods are formed and the way they hit the line, it's going to be a very difficult time for any team trying to defend against that. So I'm just loving this unpredictability from the Springboks, bringing through some unorthodox kicks, some tip-ons and little passes from the forwards standing out wide, more of the offloads you're starting to see from Archie Snyman that are opening up a lot of the opportunities for second carriers in the midfield. The Springboks are just adding so many little attacking elements to the game. It's making it a very difficult challenge for any defense. And anyone who thinks the Springbok game is one-dimensional and just brash and blunt and through the middle, I think they just showcase that they can literally do anything and they can do it all. We don't want to wax too lyrical. All teams go through highs and lows, but the Springboks are really constantly evolving. They're not resting on their laurels. They're showing that they got to keep evolving and keep mixing it up. Even when they're not playing the most challenging of teams, they keep adding little things to their game, which is only going to bode well for when they get to those real crunch games. And if the little interpassing between the forwards wasn't enough, we've got to just give a shout out to that Springbok scrum. Thomas du Toit, Grobelaar, Steenkamp, those guys are just absolute monsters. I actually started feeling a little bit bad for the Welsh scrum. It was just getting absolutely demolished by the power of the Springboks. They tried to do some early front row substitutions to mitigate the damage, but there was nothing they could do against the power, the size, and the force of that Springbok scrum. it's just an absolute weapon for them. And even if the scrum doesn't collapse and the Boks earn a penalty or a penalty try at the very least, someone like Jasper Wiese picking up the back and then running like an absolute cannonball into the fly half or the scrum half or whoever's dares to stand in his way. I mean, it's making for a very, very difficult, very unforgiving circumstance to be defending against, especially if you're in your 22. So again, the Boks just using their power, their smarts, and their skills really, really well. So a great game for the Boks, 3 from 3 from their end of year tour. The Autumn Nation Series has been wrapped up. The Boks have gone only 2 losses this year to Argentina and to Ireland. Not only did they take quite a few scalps, but they evolved their game plan. They introduced a whole bunch of new players that got their caps through debuts this season. So just a fantastic season for the Springboks. Obviously, there are things to work on. Nothing's ever going to be perfect, but I think there's a great season for them that I think most other international teams will be envious of and would do anything to have the record that they have at the moment. But that's just what I think. What do you think of the Springboks win over Wales? What do you think of the season as a whole? Please comment down below. Please hit like. Please hit subscribe. Hit that little notification bell so you know when a new video is uploaded. It really helps the channel. Thanks for checking out the video, and I'll see you in the next one.